Hey, good afternoon. I'm Lance Wilcox, and welcome to the download. That's your Edmunds hosted webinar where we share industry info, intelligence, and actionable insights, all designed to take your dealership and hopefully your career to that next level. So before we begin here, let me just explain a couple of things about the interface here. You will see on the right-hand corner of your screen, it's the Go to Webinar Control Panel, and you'll see a spot where you can type questions in. So at any point in this broadcast, if you have a question to ask one of our panelists, go ahead and type it in here, and we'll get to as many as we can. All you do is you type it in, and you will notice when you type it in, the send button becomes activated. Then you just click send. So with that, we are just about to start, folks. And let me turn the webcam on so you will see our power panel. There you go, the download panel. Man, we have a special guest today from American Honda Motor Corps, and we'll be introducing him in a second, but we'll be introducing all of them. So today we're going to be talking about certified pre-owned inventory and how you can take that to the next level. So take it away, guys. What are we going to hear today?
We're going to hear all about CPO and how awesome CPO is and why this might be the best time in the past, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, 15 years that I can remember for CPOs. Ever? Why don't we start by introducing ourselves?
Right. My name's Ivan Drew. I'm the Senior Manager of Industry Analysis over here at Edmunds. Been doing this for a while. Even worked at Honda for a short stint, which is great as well. Yeah, I guess I'm good on that.
You're good?
Yeah, you're Mr. Matt.
My name's Matt. I've been here at Edmunds for a little over 6 years. Prior to being at Edmunds, I spent what seems like 1,000 years, but it was only 12 years in car dealerships in Southern California, doing a variety of jobs. I was on the floor, in internet, on the desk, and in finance. Altogether about 18 years in the car business, but we don't matter. He matters. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Rodriguez. I'm the National Manager for Auto Remarketing for American Honda.
How long have you been with Honda?
28 years.
Whoa. Are you even 28 years old?
Oh, I'm feeling really old now. I should have said 20 years.
20 years.
Folks, that's close to 50 years of collective experience.
We got a whole bunch of experience up here. So what we wanted to do to start off is obviously today's topic for the webinar is certified pre-owned cars. We're calling this a certified pre-owned summer. We're going to explain why later. But before we do, a brief recap of what we covered on our last webinar, which was actually part 1. This is part 2. Last time, if you remember, we went and we spoke about the situation of used cars, right? Discussing how the average transaction price of your average used car in the country is now a little over 20 grand. And trying to highlight the importance of that, not just for us as sellers, but for what your customers are saying. Because, 6, 7 years ago when they bought their previous car, 20 grand was like a new Camry, right? Or a new Accord. So that same kind of money is now putting them sometimes into the pre-owned market. And we wanted to make sure everybody understood and respect that. We also discussed, because of the changing landscape, how trade-ins are now worth a little bit less than they have been in the past. Meaning that your customer who is on a schedule of trading in cars every 6 years, because that's the average.
Loyalist, right?
Especially if you're loyalist, right?
Over and over again.
So if you traded in a car from a manufacturer and you were used to getting X percentage of your sale price back, that ain't the case anymore.
Yeah,
right?
Knock off another 5, maybe even 10%, depending on the vehicle, brand, age, etc.
We also, in our last, and we're giving you all this as a primer for what we're talking about today, we'd also discussed in our last webinar how the gap between new car pricing and used car pricing is growing.
Yes.
New car prices are becoming very high, and luckily, used car prices seem to be a little bit depressed. So that gap is getting wider between choosing a new car and a pre-owned car. And all of that together makes this a pretty good time for certified pre-owned cars to really just take the forefront. More than anything that I can recall in my time in the business. So probably a good time for all, right?
Absolutely.
Now we're talking about CPO, and just wanted to give you a brief update of what we did last time, which led us into this conversation. So our first section is, how do we get it? Why are we talking about CPO?
And why is the market the way it is right now, right? And I think that one of the things that we really do have to highlight, because CPO it's a program, it's a tool, is the idea that why do we even have it? And my slide that I like here, it's a little confusing at first, but it is confusing. You wonder, what is the most reliable car? What's the most durable car? You can phrase it in any which way, shape, and form and come up with different answers. But in the end of the day, the customer wants one thing. They want to make sure their car is going to run it's going to function as needed, and they're not driving the liability.
Right.
And in the end, you can get different answers, but certification takes away all the worry, it takes away all the, like, oh, is this covered, is that covered, is my car going to be running 10 years from now? It's like, that's one of those things where you can say a certified vehicle, it's kind of like a nice blanket statement, instead of like researching to death what is the most reliable car.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it's peace of mind. It's almost like that security blanket, for the buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that pretty much sums up what people are hoping for with certified, right? So give us some numbers. That's your thing, dude.
Yeah, I like the numbers, you know that. And since I like the Google, since everybody uses the Google, you can actually use the tool they have that allows you to see trends, and literally call it Google Trends. You look up certified pre-owned, and you can see how often that comes up. It's indexed towards, is it popular now? Was it popular back then? You can see that it charts almost at a one-to-one correlation with the actual sales of certified pre-owned vehicles. And you can postulate that it's either that consumers are researching then buying, or maybe they went to the lot and they heard about this and therefore they bought later. But at the same time, you don't see this with other categories of sales. Standard use sales do not follow this pattern. New doesn't either. And I mean, this one, it's heavily influencing one another. Chicken or the egg, take your pick. It could be one or the other. Right?
So maybe like a little bit of ambiguity as to what, like, well, I guess we could talk about that a little bit later. But if you see research kind of mirroring purchases, people are spending a lot of time researching this particular segment,
it's an
right?
unknown factor. People know what a new car is. They know what a used car is, but they don't know what a certified pre-owned car is. And that's where some of the transparency and information needs to come to light in order to help sell these products.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think really supports what you're just saying is that millennial buyer is just the largest buying segment out there, and they're digital warriors. They're comfortable with the internet. They want to know the facts. They're a facts-based buyer. So they're leveraging all that data that's at their fingertips through a mouse or a keyboard to help them in their buying process.
Right. We're seeing that it comes to fruition, right? They're not just researching and not buying. They research and then purchase. Otherwise, these two lines wouldn't go in order.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I mean, CPO growth since I think 2009 has grown like 150%.
Yeah.
So it's really lends itself to that to that millennial buyer.
Wow, that was that big. How are we selling a lot of CPOs? Yes, 150% more.
150% more, and at the same time, like the composition of franchise used dealers, not independents or like a CarMax kind of thing. It's in the 20-ish%, 25%, depending on how you want to look at it. But if we look at what's going to happen over time, right, because there's more pieces of inventory that will qualify for certification going forward versus in years prior. You look at that inventory mix, right, on this next slide.
New and near inventory on the rise.
The idea that it's not just off lease, but these trade-ins, because new car sales are very good right now. 16, 17-ish million units, and a little bit under half of those involve a trade. Some are too old. You might be trading a 15-year-old car. That's never going to make it to CPO status. But people sometimes have life events, and things change. Now they have more kids than they expected. They need a minivan instead of that sedan that they have. They'll trade in a 2-year-old car. That 2-year-old car might be perfect for certification. So that pool of inventory is growing at the same time.
So people trading in cars early, right? Lease returns, those two things playing into helping stock this inventory of certifiable cars, right? Okay. So who is, now we're going to start a second section. Who is actually shopping for CPO? There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I think there's a lot of information. This is actually the most interesting webinar, in my opinion, that we've got. I think it's the most valuable, but the insights in here are really good. So let's talk about who's actually shopping for this type of car. It's kind of interesting when you think about CPO. At least I'm going to speak from a dealer side, okay, because I spent a million years at a dealer. What we would do, or at least in my experience had been, is the sales team would kind of separate customers into like, 2, maybe 3 buckets, but mainly 2. A person who's going to buy new, maybe they're going to lease new, but that's still a new customer, or a person who's going to buy used. And the mindset for the person who's going to buy used from the sales side is this person's looking for something inexpensive, inexpensive, budget, inexpensive. New car buyers were, sometimes treated a little bit differently, but they were also looked at as though, hey, they have the resources to do whatever they want. And because they have these resources to do whatever they want, they are going new. That's what makes the most sense for them. But what we're seeing is, if I'm understanding this data correctly, and please chime in.
Sure.
What we're seeing now is that our certified pre-owned shoppers actually mirror new car shoppers and the way they behave and their mannerisms, what they're looking for, and how they act. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at this split of the different age brackets that people fall into and what kind of shopping patterns they have, we definitely see on the site that they do cater more towards a new shopper's behaviors. They do a lot of the same things, but at the same time, they do even more research than either new or used, and typically it's double the amount of time, because they're basically doing double the amount of work, right? They're looking at something that is a quasi in between state of mind, so naturally it's reflected in the fact that they spend a lot of time researching.
And it's something that they're maybe not quite as familiar with, again, as traditional new and traditional used, right?
Yeah, and I think another thing that's kind of fueling this, this phenomena is, these 2-3-year-old cars, they have all the technology wants, that consumers want, the backup mirrors, the Apple CarPlay, the Bluetooth functionality, so they can get all those latest tech features, which really resonates with the millennials, and on a car that's only a couple years old.
And do you remember 2 webinars ago, we talked about the gap price between new car and used car?
$13,500.
$13,500. So like the average difference in price between a car, a 2019 and 2016 transaction price for, right now, $13,500. So if you can get those types of features, Apple CarPlay and adaptive cruise and all that stuff in a car that's 13 grand less, why wouldn't you look at it, right?
Right.
Seems like, again, a lot of things are driving people towards CPO, right? Now, how about you talk about this next factoid?
A certain type of customer?
Yes.
the savvier shopper?
Yes, the savvier shopper, the more value out.
I think that this one speaks, and we, neither of us are ladies, right? None of us here are ladies, but at the same time.
This is a gender conversation.
Right, we know this. Women are in control of our lives, and we're good with that. I'm like,
yes, that's how it goes.
But the good thing is they're better with the finances. They're looking for more value. And I think that when you look at this split, this gender split of male to female and who's shopping CPO, we see that women over-index compared to the other two traditional buckets that we have.
So doing a lot of research, right? Looking for a lot of value, looking for transparency in what kind of warranty I'm getting, and maybe saying I can buy new, but I don't need to when I can get my Apple CarPlay and my adaptive cruise control on something that could be a whole lot less, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of who our shopper is right now that we're talking about. Awesome. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think, the peace of mind aspect, especially for the female shopper, I think that's something that really resonates with that buyer.
Right. I mean, and you know what, I couldn't imagine, my mom happens to be female. I couldn't imagine my mom wanting to go through any hassles with her car. And, I know we're not, I don't want it to sound like, gender specific, but nobody wants to go through hassles. But I'm sure her sensitivities to that might be more so than mine, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
That warranty is a great security blanket.
Makes sense. So what are shoppers' expectations? Next slide, please. What are our shoppers' expectations? The research has shown that people understand that CPO is a valuable tool. They know that it's a valuable option. But research has also shown that people don't necessarily understand what CPO is, right? They know that certified pre-owned is a safety net, it's a comfort blanket, but they don't know all the ins and outs. And actually, let's talk about the shopper behaviors on our site and how we can verify that.
So kind of referencing back to the idea of like consumers go on Google and they look up certified pre-owned. So clearly they want information. So what is that exact information they're getting? It is literally what is a certified pre-owned car. It is the number one thing that comes up in our shopper behavior when we filter out to people that have seen CPO pages. They always come across these two articles. It is what is a certified pre-owned vehicle, and then how does it differ from an extended warranty? Whereas, the OEM has a very different program from just saying, hey, here's parts that are covered.
Right.
And they want to know why. What is the value add? Why am I paying an extra,
couple hundred,
$700, $1,200, whatever the price gap is between their standard used unit and their CPO? They dive into the why. They question it.
So we're seeing a customer, again, pragmatic, thoughtful. They want to be getting the most money most value for their money, right? They could buy new, they don't want to, but their research also shows that they know what CPO is, but they're not exactly sure what it really is. And I guess that makes sense because CPO programs can vary from brand to brand, right? So if there's any kind of cross-shopping, it can be kind of confusing, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I guess the data recommends it. So we know that they're female shoppers, and we know that people who look for CPO have a little bit of ambiguity as to what exactly it means, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And these programs haven't existed forever, right? I mean, the lengthiest one's probably not more than
1992, something like that, right? Yeah, so it's not like something that people have always had in their life, right?
Especially when you're only in the market every 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's not what people are talking about. So what do people look for when they say they want CPO? What are their most hot points? What are the most valued features of CPO based on the data?
I think that, and come of no surprise to anybody, but they are looking for that warranty. I think the thing that kind of taken aback on my end was that they're not looking for an all-inclusive, the rest of my life with this vehicle kind of warranty. Just 1 year came up more often than 2 year.
Right.
Marginal percentage of difference. Consumers have said that's what they're looking for. But then again, a Carfax history. That's not something that's rocket science. This
Right.
isn't something that involves an amount of inspection that involves you dismantling the transmission and finding out what's inside there. Just print that out.
Yeah, and
that's like what, 20, 40 bucks a car, or whatever.
Probably even less if you're a dealer.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting here to me is, at least if you read the question, is at least 1 year extended bumper to bumper warranty. And that term bumper to bumper or limited or whatever we're talking about, that was called out more in the survey and more in the research than maybe powertrain.
Yeah.
Right. And so that might be an opportunity to cover, the Apple CarPlay, the adaptive cruise control,
Sure.
all these different things that are attracting people, but it should be called out because it says 60% of people are looking for a bumper-to-bumper warranty. So that would be something I think that we were hitting on when you're discussing CPO.
Yeah, especially, when there's more technology in the cars than there was, say, 5, 10 years ago.
Makes sense, right? So what we normally do with our webinars is we like to give you a little bit of a history as to how we got to the position that we're in right now that we're discussing. Give you some background as to what your shoppers are experiencing, covering like who your shoppers are. In this case, the over-index female. They can buy whatever they want. They could buy new or they could buy used, but they're going to CPO, and we think it's because they're looking for the value. We think that we recognize that they're looking for to make the most of their money, and because cars are getting so new, right? So, but the most important part is what our third section, which is we call the roadmap to success, and that's what we're going to get into now. The roadmap to success is based on here's the information that we have, and here's the data that we've got, and how can we marry the two to help you get some action in your dealership or your store or your region that doesn't really cost you anything to execute, but can help you understand your market better and serve your customers better. And we care about this because it's like there are customers too.
Yeah.
Here at Edmunds, if we're directing people to your store, to your dealer, there are customers as well. So we want everybody to have like the best experience possible,
level,
right?
Too.
Yes. So I think before we jump into that, I think it's really important to talk about affordability and how important that is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, when we look at something like leasing, which has traditionally been the cheapest manner in which to get into a brand new car, it's kind of topped off at this 30% range. And some of the dynamics have, shifted on this, like residual values on a decline, especially on sedans, coupes, things of that nature.
Rates are a little higher.
Right, and they used to be the mass market vehicle, but now it's the SUV. So with some of those dynamics on the back end changing, leasing's not as affordable or as attractive.
But it's still a player. Right.
But the other manner in which consumers can save a lot of money, if we look at both, if we take these new car sales and you look at near new sales, the proportion of them has changed from 39% to 47% near new used.
So we're saying like cars that are 4 years old, 5 years ago they're sitting at a 39% market share. Now they are 47%, almost a 10% increase in just 5 years, right? So in the same 5 years, we've seen leasing become a little bit, we've seen it go on an upward trajectory. It's a little stagnant now because of market conditions, but recently it's been going up. It went from low adoption to mid adoption, right? And we're seeing 4-year-old cars go from lowish to mid-ish. This trajectory suggests that people are very concerned with what their monthly outlay is, right? Yeah. I think that people in the dealerships understand, and I think a lot of us understand that although we're always looking for the best overall deal and we're looking to be the most thoughtful with our money, this is America, and people are very concerned with like what's in their pocket, what's coming into their bank account in January, and what's going out of their bank account in January, and that like pushes a lot of buyer behavior. So people want low payments. I think that's a long way of saying people want low payments, right? So affordability is important. Now, this next slide is my favorite slide of all the slides of all the webinars that we've done. Okay, please introduce this one, please, if you would.
Even though it's your favorite,
it's my favorite one.
I conjured up these numbers, therefore I should.
Yes, you're the number. Right? You're the number guy.
Okay, so when we look at what happens when we have a serious shopper, someone who's going to buy and someone who does buy, when we look at a lead that closes, how long it takes to close, and the difference between a new shopper versus a used. The used shopper, because of the market that they're shopping in, the uniqueness of the vehicle, and the sheer fact that they really want that car, 1/5 of them buy the same day they submit the lead. I mean, how serious are you? They're like, you know what? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Now it's noon, I'm in the dealership and I'm buying a car. Now it's 3 o'clock, I'm out the door.
Absolutely. And the reason that this is my favorite slide, this is the most impactful slide of anything that we've done, is coming from the dealership and working primarily in internet sales departments for the majority of my time in the stores. I'm very aware that we had processes to address customers. A lead comes in from the customer, and whether it's a new car or a used car, they get the same process. You know, they're followed up with in the same way for the most part. And that follow-up process may include like, hey, we're going to call the customer. We are going to send the customer an email. We may text them. We may send them a video. We're going to try to reach out to them a certain amount of times in day one. And then if we're unable to gain contact, we're going to put that person on a burner and then, you know, go on to our other tasks, right? But this data suggests that on day one, a full 20% of people are making their purchases. So that tells me that your process that you're using for maybe new car shoppers isn't appropriate for our used car shoppers, and especially not for our CPO shoppers. And this is the reason why I think that's so valuable, is because we've already determined that our CPO shoppers have new car shopper tendencies and behaviors, right? They may have already bought a new car in their past, and they know what a new car purchase experience is like. They want to be attended to, right? They're expecting white glove treatment. We have to give them white glove treatment because of all of these surveys, right? We have to give them white glove treatment because we're fighting for, you know, to get this customer's attention from the other 15 other brands that sell this, or other stores that sell the same brand. They're used to being waited on hand and foot. Our used car shoppers, though, they don't necessarily get that type of treatment. It's just, I mean, it's not, I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, it's just what it is. But the numbers suggest that they should be, because they're closing twice as quickly, right? So if I had this information and I was still working at a store and I was in the internet sales department, I think it would be valuable to consider creating a separate process for my used car shoppers, seeing how quickly they close compared to my new car shoppers. And I think we did the math, and we said that like 65% of all the leads that sell within 10 days of lead submittal, right?
Yeah.
If I've got a store and I've got a process where I'm chasing customers down at day 45, day 90, day 180, that's great and all.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of me selling somebody who's 120 days old is nowhere near the likelihood of me talking to somebody who's like 5 days old, especially if they're new, or I'm sorry, they're used. So I'd be changing my process around based on this data. So that's why this is my favorite, because it's actionable and it's free.
So Dan, I mean, it sounds in a way like these CPO customers have the urgency of used, but maybe the expectations of new.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, and I talked about it a little bit earlier with you guys. I mean, to me, you know, it reminds me of this movie I had seen a number of years ago. It was with Alec Baldwin. It was called Glengarry Glen Ross, and I think they were selling time sharing, you know, type of things. And all the time sharing sales guys, they're clamoring for the Glengarry Glen Ross leads. These are the Glengarry Glen Ross leads because these people are converting quick, you know. And the neat thing about, especially with certified, there's lots of reasons, you know, to engage that customer, you know, whether it's, you know, the thoroughness of the, you know, inspection checklist, you know, photos of the car. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to recontact that customer and show them the relevance, you know, of the product.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it looks like, I think if I'm doing the math right, like 40 of these people buy it by the end of the second day.
Yeah, I mean, it's rather incredible. And if we could bucket this out even to CPO, because again, it's availability of inventory, and you know, new dime a dozen.
Dime a dozen.
Right.
You can get them anywhere,
Right.
whatever color, trim, blah blah blah. You can order one. Used cars don't live in that space.
Right.
CPO doesn't either, because we're filtering. Every time we add a different element, we're filtering out. That means that you must act quickly. If you're a shopper and you finally see that purple car with that sunroof you love, and it's certified, we've taken so many other vehicles out of contention. You know you want that one.
Yeah, and
you must get it quickly.
And I love your point of having, like, now that you're talking about a certified car, you have more ways to engage, because on the sales side, it's like, hey, I already called this guy and left a message. Am I going to call back again and say the same thing? Hey, it's Matt again. I know I called you at noon. Here it's me calling you at 3. I'm going to call you again at 5 and 7, right? But if you called back and said, hey, I've got some information on the car that you've looked at, you know, regarding its repair history or its service history or what we've done to maintain it. You have a lot of different
Absolutely.
ways to have contact points. I love that. I think it's a great idea. What if somebody's looking for a CPO and they decide not to, and the CPO, that purple one with the sunroof's gone? What do they do?
Well, I mean, people have options, and we did ask some folks a couple of years ago, what would they do? And I mean, standard response, I'll just go buy a used car instead, right? You can buy a new car, which we've got about 30% of people saying that, because we're talking about CPO shoppers have the means and the ability. They're dictating what they're going to do, not funneled into either one. But this 20% number, this is the dedicated shopper who's like, I must get a certified pre-owned vehicle. They see the value in it. They understand the reasons why this is going to be their next purchase. And if you look at that share of sales, especially back then when the survey was conducted, it virtually mirrors it. About 20% of all franchise used sales were certified.
Right.
20% of people here saying the same thing. They're like, look, I'm getting a certified car. Don't sell me just some other random used vehicle. Don't try to sell me on a new car. So there is a contingent of, consumer that this is what they're going to buy. And if they're not going to buy it from you, they're going to buy it from somebody else. But they're going to buy one.
They're going to buy one of these because that's what their heart is at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's I wanted to hand this over to you for a second.
Okay.
All right. Again, I hate to keep talking about what it's like on the sales floor, but and nobody on this call does this. It was just me. I'm taking all the blame. I was the only one who did this. All of you guys are great. I was terrible. Okay. But it was very easy to have a conversation with the customer and make the conversation about the car based on price. You could make it like, hey, this is the end of the week sale, end of the month sale. This is the Memorial Day holiday sale. And because of that, you got a $2,000 discount or whatever it was, right? What do you think is actually maybe a more compelling story than just, talking about the price of a car based on what we've talked about, what a customer wants? They want a warranty, they want a safety net, they want some transparency. What would be a better way of going about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, there's tremendous value in the certified car. Our research shows customer really wants that transparency. They want that warranty. We've got a lot of things, and I'm sure we're not unique to this. I'm sure all the manufacturers have a process that validates this. You have a checklist process that the car has to go through. For us, it's 187 points. Okay, so showing the customer, walking them through that, showing these are the things that were done to bring this car up to, a near new standard. There's value in that. And who's doing the work? It's not, Bubba, hey, I always wanted to work on one of these cars. It's a factory trained technician. It's a dealer who's invested in sending his folks to get that training. It's the dealer who's invested in brick and mortar and equipment and facility to support that. And our goal is a little bit different. Our goal is, protecting the integrity of our brand. A brand is a real difficult thing to build, but a very easy thing to lose, so that's why the thoroughness of the inspection process. And that's a story that you share with the customer, the Carfax and all the other things that support that. But the thoroughness of the inspection process gives them a little bit of security, that this car is going to be with them and, serve them well, during the duration that they keep it.
That's what they're looking for, right? Can we go to, make sure we're on slide 22? And these are just some of the things like very easily that a person could, talk about. The brakes have been inspected, the tire and wheels have been inspected, the body's in good condition, it's never been a salvage title, here's a vehicle history report. And you said something that I loved when we spoke last time. How long does it take to do this?
Yeah, it's a couple of minutes. It's not like we're going into like a half hour process, showing all this stuff. It's powerful. And you don't have to just say it with, with words that evaporate in the air. You can grab a file, that shows them. Here's the material. Here's the checklist. Here's where it was signed off. Here's the RO that supports, that these parts were replaced. Whether it's done through a paper file or digitally, it's a powerful tool, that gives validity to the process.
Better than saying, hey, what if I could take another $500?
Exactly.
No, I was the only one who did that. Okay, so let's pretend that we've had that customer that is like, money.
Sees no value in these other components.
Money. What is another advantage that a CPO may have over a non-CPO product?
Let's talk about the cost of borrowing money. I mean, literally that, right? Like some automakers, Honda's one of them, BMW does, Mercedes occasionally, things of that nature. You can get subvented interest rates. And I think that that's a selling point that, when you put it on paper and you say, look, the average used car loan is 9% APR. Compare that to 2.9 over the same term, you save them $3,000-$4,000. That's your savings. Like, look, you might not like the price of the car up front,
right?
But look at the totality of what's going to happen here, and you're going to save so much more money. Try to sell it on that front instead.
Absolutely. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And from a manufacturer's view, a little bit bigger view. I mean, especially with the off-lease portfolios coming back, we want as many cars back in our dealer network. Why? Because we know they're going to be checked well, you know, and when the customer takes delivery of that car, we're improving our chances of a good experience. And when we improve our chances of a good experience, our likelihood of getting them to be a customer again, I mean, it increases tenfold. I mean, one of the things that I was really surprised about when I came into this role was the amount of purchase loyalty for CPO. I mean, for us on the Honda side, it's almost half. Almost half come back and buy a new Honda. And that's not based on a survey, that's based on actual registration data. Why does that happen? Because the car is checked well, and should something go wrong, we take care of it.
Right, that's that safety blanket that we were talking about. So we said in our outreach that we were going to try to keep this to 30 minutes, and we're a little bit over that right now. So we're going to sum up, but hopefully we can keep you for another 5 minutes after that. Okay. So real quick summary of what we discussed today. Hopefully these are some points we wanted to make sure that you take away. The market is ripe for CPO sales, probably better than any time that I've seen, any time ever. You know, market conditions,
programs, inventory, every single aspect,
and the cost of new cars makes CPO super attractive comparatively to 10, 15 years ago, right? And now that you know, we've seen that how people are very price conscious. It's like it's just more ammo to say CPO is the way to go, even if you can buy a new car. We also wanted to make sure that people on this call understood that CPO shoppers' behavior more mirrors new car shoppers than what we think of as used car shoppers. And they have those new car sensibilities because they can buy new cars. They can buy it if they want to, right? So the way that we treat them, the way that we inventory our cars, the way that we respond to their requests maybe should align with who we are talking to. And these are people who essentially, they don't have unlimited resources, but they can do what they want, right? They're not being funneled into one thing. They're choosing to do this, right? We also wanted to definitely point out that CPO attracts female buyers, right? So be aware of that. You know, like we had said before, you know, we like to think of like the stereotypical family coming in, you know, 2.3 kids or whatever, and it might be habit forming for the salesperson to, you know, go directly to the husband or to the man of the couple. Maybe no. You know, we already know that person's not going to be as involved in the decision making as she is anyway.
She might have done all the research.
She's probably done, you know, she may have done the research. That's what the data shows. This is one that's really near and dear to me because I've always been like about like product demonstrations and showing the value of what you're buying. We can't assume that our CPO shoppers actually know what CPO is, right? They know it's something good, but they don't know the guts of it, and that's what our research has suggested, right? But we also shouldn't expect that our sales staff knows what CPO is. I've talked to some salespeople informally in the past couple days just to see like, hey, how are people handling CPO requests? And I'm being very diplomatic. There is room for improvement, right? I'm just being diplomatic. So if you're talking about a person who has done 17 hours of research, talking to a salesperson who hasn't, that's a mismatch, and that's already, you know, we're messing up what our buyers' expectations are. Because again, this is a high-pipe customer; they can do whatever they want. They want service. Make sure they study that. And if we know what people want with CPO, it kind of makes sense to tailor our demos around that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, for me, you know, it's one of my favorite, you know, sayings is it's providing reasons to engage. Now, the price, that's just one reason to engage, you know, and price can be something that Tom, Dick, and Harry can offer, but providing them, you know, and we don't have to make things up. I mean, we've got, you know, we've got a powerful checklist that shows all the things that were done. We've got ROs showing that this was the investment made to bring this car up to standard. We've got the advantages of portability. You know, okay, great. My car breaks in my 25-mile radius. I go to my local guy. What if I'm on vacation? You know, the benefit of a manufacturer program, I've got 1,100 Honda dealers. Car breaks down someplace, they can go to any one of them and get that taken care of.
And that's that safety net.
And exactly, it's that safety net that, you know, like I said, takes a couple minutes to talk about.
So I had a couple quick questions I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Is that all right? Okay. How would you encourage a salesperson to defend the price of a CPO car versus a non-CPO car that's on the lot?
Yeah, so I mean, quite frankly, I'd say, you know, customer says, hey, this one's cheaper. Absolutely, it is cheaper.
You're saying no, don't run from it.
Absolutely, but this car, you know, doesn't have, you know, new tires. this car, hasn't been checked that the brake pads, meet a certain requirement. This car hasn't gone through all the checks, that needed to be gone through to qualify. Not every car can qualify to be a certified car. This one didn't. Now, if you want cheap, I guess you could go to this. We'll sell you both. But if you want that security, and you want to know that, you're protected, this is the vehicle for you.
That's awesome. Another question, not for the salesperson, like for a salesperson who wants to think about like the, I don't know, the viability of their store, somebody who cares about the whole environment. Does CPO have any benefit for the store besides just that sale?
Absolutely. I mean, because a CPO car has to be brought up to a certain standard, there's reconditioning expense. Okay, as an owner, that reconditioning expense stays within the store. So your service department, generates revenue off of that. From a loyalty standpoint, as I said, almost half come back and buy a new car. But from a service standpoint, for us, it's almost 20 percentage points higher that customers come back and have their service work done at the dealership. For a used car, I think it's like 40-some%. For a CPO, it's like in the 60% range.
Wow.
So all those things are, gifts giving back for the dealer's investment of bringing this car up to a good standard, making sure the customer has a good experience that translates to them coming back and buying from the store again. And if you're the salesperson that sold them that, you get a crack at, and making that sale again.
That makes sense. Who would you say, if you had to choose like any like age groups, who would you say is looking at CPO probably most thoroughly?
That's a great question, and we just recently looked at, those numbers. It's really broken down into the two biggest buyers, are the millennial and the matures. And both, are predisposed towards, CPO. The difference is the millennial buyer is it's the largest buying segment out there right now.
That's incredible. Is there anything that you would like to throw in here?
Ooh.
Mr. Numbers?
Mr. Numbers? Admittedly, I cannot think of anything because I went over so many numbers.
And you got this guy who knows anything. All I wanted to add is like a sincere thank you for taking the time to
come
my
all
pleasure. From American Honda to come hang out with us here.
A lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Just to give you a little primer of what we're going to be talking about next time, our next download is going to be August 14th.
Yes, sir.
We like Wednesdays. And we're going to be talking about model year sell down.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics, just because it varies so wildly from one automaker to the next, and some lag, some are well ahead of the game, and the dynamics are very different, especially if you compare how this year's looking to years prior, and even if we go farther backwards. So just to give some information as to why we see some of these lagging cars, 19s are sitting on the lot.
There might still be some 18s sitting around right now, right?
No, there's definitely some 18s still on the lot.
Yeah, so we're going to give you some tips to try to help get rid of some of this inventory, but probably more important than tips, we're going to give you some reasons why you want to get rid of the inventory early when you can, when the opportunity is there.
Yeah.
And
that's it. So August the 14th, we'll be doing that next webinar. We hope, Dan talked about getting a crack at making the sales again. Hope we'll get a crack at educating you again and getting you all back. Now, if you want to go ahead and register for it, go to edmunds.com/the-download so you can register for that next webinar, and you can watch a recording of this one as well as get some other information. So with that, we are going to wish you a great day and a great sales week. Look forward to having you back. All the best. Goodbye.
I think we need to end all of these with like, let's get a sandwich.
I was looking at Eddie.
He's already back.